Well, I think we have a beautiful, wonderful meeting plan today, and we're going to get started right now. And I just want to say welcome to the 350 Seattle General Meeting. My name is Shimona. I will be your host this evening. I am so happy to see you all here, and we got some really great speakers who are going to talk to us about this. Oh my gosh, affordable housing as a Green New Deal solution. But before we get into that, I would like to hand it over to B to lead us in a land acknowledgement and a song. So please, B, when you're ready, take it away.
Thanks, Shimona. Yeah, hey everyone. Good to see familiar faces and some new names. My name's B. I use they and she pronouns, and I'm calling in as a guest on the lands of the Willow people by the Sammamish River. And we really want to lift up the fact that most of our organizing with 350 Seattle is happening on the homelands of the Coast Salish peoples and the shared waters of all tribes and bands, named and unnamed, including the Duwamish, the Suquamish, the Tulalip, and the Muckleshoot nations. We really want to give a strong uplifting to the Duwamish tribe who still aren't federally recognized. And we can and encourage you to go out of your way to directly support them as settlers here by contributing to Real Rent Duwamish, where we can actually pay real rent to the community who call this beautiful and resilient place home. So I'm going to drop some links in the chat where you can learn more about paying real rent. And also one is a petition where you can sign and stand in solidarity with the Duwamish to restore their federal recognition. So encourage you to save those or save it for later, check those out. Our work with 350 is directly about committing to solidarity and struggle with Indigenous sovereignty and those on the front lines of the climate crisis while we nurture the regeneration of meaningful and healthy communities. So I want to invite us all to take some deep breaths together with a moment to sit in this commitment to solidarity and to pay respect to elders past and present here, and from wherever you all are calling in from. So we'll take a deep breath in and out with a sigh. Let whatever wants to come out, come out. You can probably do two more. And breathe in. One more deep breath in. Awesome. Yeah, thanks for doing that with me. Honestly, every time I really feel the impact of just taking 3 deep breaths, especially with all of you. So we're gonna open our container tonight with a song. With, you know, I'm feeling the awakening of spring, and this song is about the radical belief in the good things coming, the good things that we are seeding, and the good things that people have been seeding for long before us. So this is a song called The Morning Song by the People's Echo. I'm gonna put the lyrics in the chat here, and I'll sing it one time through for us to show you what it sounds like. And then I will play a beautiful recording with amazing harmonies that we can sing along to. And so it sounds like this, the morning song. I believe in the good things coming. I believe in the love that lives on this earth of resilient bodies. I am here to receive. I am here to give. And it's just like that, and it repeats. So I will play this beautiful recording, and you know, you can experiment with it. Let however your voice wants to weave with this, weave as it wishes.
I believe in the good things coming. I believe in the love that lives on this earth of resilient bodies. am here to give. I believe in the good things coming. I believe in the love that lives on this earth of resilient bodies. I am here to receive. I am here to give. I believe in the good things coming. I believe in the love that lives on this earth of resilient bodies. I am here to receive. I am here to give. I believe in the good things coming. I believe in the love that lives on this earth of resilient bodies. I am here to receive. I am here to give.
Thank you for joining me in song and opening this space in such a special way. And with that, I'll pass it back to Shimona.
Thank you, Bea. Thank you so much. It always feels good to open up our space, honoring the land that we're on and honoring our relationship that we are forming with one another, even through our Zoom screens. And it's always beautiful to hear voices doing that. So tonight, I kind of want to just like launch into a couple of Zoom logistics, and I'm going to share my screen for y'all so you can read it as I go along. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. So tonight, this meeting will be recorded. And if you do not wish to have your face recorded, please turn off your video. And I also ask for those of you who can find their mute button, it's at the bottom there. Make sure it is clicked on, turn on mute, because we want to make sure that the speakers can speak in beautiful, clear ways without a bunch of background noise, because it's can be very distracting. If you do want to like show your appreciation, or you have questions, or if you need help, use the chat. For appreciation, drop a ++ in the ++ line to show your agreement. But also remember to be respectful and mindful of your words. And also just like, we're going to hear a lot of beautiful things from the GND team, the Green New Deal team. And so make sure that like you're spending more time listening and less time typing out what your response is. So please be mindful. Closed captioning is available. If you click on the CC at the bottom of the screen, you will be able to click on it and select show subtitles, and you'll be able to select see and make the screen bigger and move it wherever you need it in order to be able to read. And we'll be following up with resources after, I think by Friday evening or Monday at the latest. And with that, I am going to hand it over to our beautiful Seattle for Green New Deal team, Jess Wallach, Amanda Sorrell, and Aki and BJ. I think everybody's here, a whole team. And it's going to go to Amanda first. Here we go.
Yes, thank you, Shimona. Thank you, Bea. I feel very grounded and welcomed after that introduction. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here with you. My name is Amanda, and my pronouns are she, her. And I've been part of 350 Seattle's Green New Deal team for a couple of years now, so I get a chance to tell you about what it is and what we're up to. Next slide, please, Shimona. Thank you. So Seattle's Green New Deal is a climate justice and jobs program that aims to make Seattle healthier and more sustainable for everybody who lives here, not just a few. So that's a simple description of a very big vision. We're building power to win community investments that create healthy, resilient neighborhoods while generating thousands of good union jobs and eliminating our city's climate pollution by 2030. So you'll notice that description that I just read from this slide, it touches on a bunch of different issues. And that's because this is a multifaceted campaign out of a recognition that the climate crisis threatens everything we love and it compounds existing issues. This past pandemic year, for example, has shown us how multiple overlapping crises, including systemic racism, economic injustice, and climate change and the virus, are interconnected in how they impact people. So our solutions have to be interconnected too. We don't have to choose between which crisis to solve. We don't have to accept the narrative that we can only fund one solution at a time, because the most powerful climate strategies are also strategies that help people thrive. And the good news is we believe these kinds of solutions are ready to go and that they'll make our lives better. Seattle's Green New Deal looks like, for example, a massive build out of affordable housing, which is what we're here to talk about today. It also looks like free buses and healthy neighborhoods where people can safely walk and roll and bike. It looks like transitioning our homes from fossil fuels to clean energy, which could lower utility bills and create hundreds of union jobs along the way. And it looks like community investments in education and jobs training and real public safety. Again, a multifaceted approach. Those are the goals of Seattle's Green New Deal, and today we're here to talk to you about our focus on housing as a climate solution. And as I said before, we see everything as connected. So affordable housing is one of those solutions that addresses multiple crises at one time. More affordable housing means safely housing more of our neighbors, which means improved health. I mean, think of where we were all asked to stay put during the past year's pandemic. More affordable housing could lead to lowered displacement, which means stronger communities, as well as less driving, which means lowered emissions. So you can see how everything's connected and all of these benefits cascade from this generative source of affordable housing. And we're in Seattle, a city with a unique opportunity to focus on this because we're a hotspot for housing crisis. We've got soaring housing prices alongside one of the highest rates of homelessness in the country, and thousands of our neighbors live outdoors. The housing crisis is pushing people out, and all this extra driving is quite literally driving up our climate pollution. Low-income folks are pushed out first and furthest, and overwhelmingly, the young people who stay put in the city are rent burdened. That means they pay more than 40%. That means that more than 40% of young people pay a third or more of their income in rent. And decades of racist exclusionary housing and land use policies have only made it worse. So just like the climate crisis, Seattle's housing crisis hits communities of color and poor people first and worst. When we all have an opportunity to live in the same place where we work and where we go to school and buy food and connect with our communities, our climate pollution goes down and our lives get better. And that's great because we don't just want an improved climate all on its own, right? People's health and safety is part of the package. So that's why Seattle's Green New Deal is connected to housing. That's why we're calling for a massive build out of affordable housing and strong anti-displacement measures. And as we move toward a more sustainable future, we can keep our communities thriving where they are. One way we'll achieve this is by making sure housing is a top priority in upcoming local elections, which you'll hear about in the later half of this call. But first, you've been hearing from me for a few minutes now that housing impacts a lot of people in a lot of ways. So in an effort to make sure I'm not the only one you're hearing from about this, we have a couple of people on the call to talk about why a build out of affordable housing is important to them and how they envision living in a city with affordable housing. Aki is here to share a vision of healthy neighborhoods. BJ is here to share about how community connections can really make a difference during a crisis or multiple crises. And so Aki and BJ, if you could just introduce yourselves before you're speaking, that would be wonderful. And Aki, would you be willing to go first, please?
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. I'm Aki. I take she, her pronouns, and I've been working on the Green New Deal team since October of last year. And I will be also co-leading the Deep Canvas team, which we'll talk about a little more about later. That's a part of this vision that we have. And tonight I'm going to share a little bit about what I envision when I think of a healthy, thriving community. So when I envision a massive build out of clean, energy efficient, affordable housing, I picture thriving communities sharing beautiful and efficiently designed spaces. I see daycare centers and dental clinics, bars and restaurants, parks and soccer fields, grocery stores with fresh produce from local community gardens, and more, all within walking or biking distance. And it's safe to do both in this neighborhood because traffic is sparse, electric bus and bike lanes are plenty, and the air is clean. I also envision lush, green communal spaces where we can spend quality time with our neighbors, where our children can play while we share a healthy meal. Living in this community is not expensive because all these luxuries are not a product of gentrification. Rent in this neighborhood remains affordable and accessible so that no one is at risk of displacement. Public housing with universal rent control and strong anti-eviction measures took care of that. Housing is more than providing a roof and a place to sleep. It's also about creating a space in which everyone feels safe and has access to the means to live a full and healthy life, one without fear of rent hikes and evictions. Privately owned, publicly subsidized housing or public-private partnerships should no longer define affordable housing, where landlords, developers, and investors profit at the expense of their tenants. So a massive build out of green affordable housing is a clear pathway to achieving many of the Green New Deal's decarbonization goals, including job creation, racial and economic justice, and a higher and better quality of life, especially for communities most disadvantaged by our current system. That's my vision, and I think it's achievable, and I think we can get there together. And with that, I will pass it to BJ.
Hi, I'm BJ. I use he, him pronouns, and I was going to talk about sort of how we can end up with a more resilient community. So I was part of the 350, like the pod list groups, whatever we're calling ourselves. And so my pod is located sort of in a Finney ditch between Ballard and Finney Ridge. And it's an area where it's a street where people have actually all in all been here a while. And we do also have like some apartment buildings, some fairly small ones. So unsurprisingly, about a year ago at this point was when we actually decided, hey, we should start trying to sort of organize a bit more to help each other get through this, because there are some people, you know, that are elderly or who were immunocompromised or higher risk. So the pandemic was a bit more of an issue. So that was sort of coming together of us to be like, okay, how do we go and try to support each other, help out through this so those people don't have to go into higher risk situations like grocery stores, like how do we handle those runs for them? And also, you know, even beyond staying inside for that, we had those wildfire smoke days last September or August. I can't remember which one offhand. I think it was September. And that was actually one of the most active times that my pod actually was. In terms of sharing a lot of resources of how the heck do you try to keep your house like, you know, relatively smoke-free? What is it that people can do on that? Especially because not like anyone has air conditioning. So there was a lot of sort of resource sharing on that. Increased on how do we actually try to, you know, really minimize sort of trips out that are not non-essential. And it was the most we did in sort of outreach to our sort of unsheltered neighbors, because this is Ballard, like most parts of Seattle. Sadly, there's a lot of that. And we hit the point where we're like, hey, if we sort of go down across the street in this weather, it's miserable. What can we do to sort of go and try to help out that? So it really, having that connection with all the neighbors really helped us sort of be ready of, okay, as things have come up, how do we go? How do we address these to make sure, we're all able to sort of get through this and help to keep each other like safe and supported. And with that, I will pass it back to Amanda.
Thank you, Aki and BJ. It's a wonderful vision of what healthy communities that are in place and able to take care of each other could look like and do look like. And actually, I think Jess is next up to talk about what's next for the Green New Deal and the campaign that we are currently building.
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. Thank you, Aki and BJ. That was lovely. I'm so excited to be organizing with you all and with those visions. But I wanted to kind of pause for a moment before we talk about what the organizing looks like to check in about our role in this work. You've just heard about so many connections and intersections, and I think 350 Seattle as a climate group has a specific role to play in all of that. So just to reiterate, Seattle's housing crisis is pushing people out of the city. All this extra driving is literally driving up our climate pollution. And y'all know that transportation in our region is already the biggest contributor to climate change. So we need to change that. And it turns out that when we all have an opportunity to live in the same place where we work and go to school, buy food and connect with our communities, our climate pollution goes way down and our lives get way better. So for that reason, and the many justice intersections you heard tonight, housing is a shared priority for many of our Green New Deal community partners. And as you can see from some of the images on this slide, communities on the front lines of the housing and displacement crisis have long been leading on solutions. Whether that's the folks who are organizing with houseless neighbors in Share Wheel and Nicholsville to demand real relief, whether that's folks who are fighting to defund SPD and invest in what keeps communities healthy and safe. That's an image from Divest Deb. Or folks like Got Green who've been leading anti-displacement work in the South End for years. So wanted to take a moment and talk with y'all about how we're showing up as a climate group that's aligning with other movements for social and racial and economic justice. We have plenty of folks in 350 Seattle who've been doing this work long before the Green New Deal team showed up, like Alice and Emily. They've laid an important foundation on affordable housing. And our partners at Got Green, with whom we launched the Seattle Green New Deal campaign 2 years ago, our shared vision for the Seattle Green New Deal from the launch included a massive build out of affordable housing. And then it was the work we'd all done together on the solidarity budget this fall, as we came together to advocate for a 2021 city budget that ensures our communities can survive and thrive. From that, healthy housing emerged as a core shared priority. So our Seattle Green New Deal team began thinking deeply about engaging with housing and climate earlier this winter, after doing initial consultations with our solidarity budget partners and confirming that there was a role for 350 Seattle to play in lifting up affordable housing as a climate solution. Our volunteer team then spent 2 months learning together about the issues and developing our equity lens before moving into campaign planning. And now, as we're starting to organize, we'll continue to build shared priorities and accountability with our Green New Deal and solidarity budget partners, including racial justice coalitions, environmental justice groups, affordable housing advocates, and aligned labor unions. Because we can't do this by ourselves, and the solutions are better when we do it together. So just a really quick recap before I move us into some time where we can all start chewing on these issues and questions together. Seattle's Green New Deal is calling for citywide affordable housing, coupled with strong anti-displacement measures and community investments. We believe it's essential to keep these in conversation with each other. We can't talk about affordable housing in a vacuum, because if it's displacing communities, then that undermines goals of both reducing climate pollution and building climate resilience. And we see community investments as key to building healthy neighborhoods where people can safely walk, roll, bus, and bike to get to the places they need to be. All things that reduce our climate pollution and make our lives better. There are so many yes ands when it comes to housing. It's about a healthy climate future, connected communities, a basic human right, public safety, young people being able to afford to stay, and more. So our organizing in coming months will tell an intersectional story, lifting up those connections and the partners leading that work. And in telling that story, Shimona, if you want to throw me a next slide, thank you. It's really easy, y'all, to dig into the issues and like not spend time imagining. But we believe that cultivating that vision for the world we want is so important to our organizing, especially when we're at the front end of a years or decades long struggle. We want to carve out some space tonight to practice that imagining with you all. So I'm going to go ahead and share this prompt that Shimona has put up on the screen. Thank you. We'll hear an example from Amanda, And then we'll invite you to get into breakout trios, I think. And we'll spend 10 minutes in those breakouts. If you don't want to join a breakout, it's super cool. You can stay here in the main room. Just don't click the join button when the Zoom prompts you to join a breakout. And then after the breakouts, we'll come back together to share. Okay, so here's the prompt. We dare to ask the question of what if we succeed and housing in Seattle becomes accessible, affordable, and keeps us rooted in our communities? What would it mean for your life? What would you be seeing around you that makes you feel healthy, safe, and connected? Aki's already offered us one lovely example of that. Amanda would invite you to share another, and then we'll go ahead and send y'all into breakout rooms to discuss with each other.
Yeah, I'd be happy to share an example from my own life that came to me yesterday. And I think there are far more serious consequences to our housing crisis than the example I'm about to give, but it's what popped into my head when I tried to imagine what it would feel like to me if we succeeded. So in a nutshell, I'm a renter who pays 40% of my income to rent. So as rent prices raise, I've had to move around a lot. And so, of course, that causes just a feeling of general instability, but I've also felt less connected to the community immediately around me because it keeps changing. And I'm an editor for a gardening magazine. So a dream of mine is to tend a shared garden space with my neighbors over the course of many years to provide for ourselves and those around us who need food and herbal medicine. So when I try to imagine affordable housing and people being able to stay in place, I imagine being able to commit to that type of project, walking around and seeing these neighborhood food hubs where people are growing food and feeding each other and they know one another. I can plant some seeds in pots and tend things here and there, but I can't really expect any type of permanence or consistent community around me. And so that's one vision that came to me, just these community projects that can bloom and thrive, that benefit people who live there. And, you know, yeah, that ultimately benefit everybody. And that's where I'll stop and let you start doing your own imagining.
Thanks so much. That was really lovely. Yeah, Shimona, would you be so kind as to send us all out into breakout groups? And we'll take 10 minutes together and then we'll come back.
Yeah. Do you want to quickly put the questions in the chat?
That's a great suggestion.
Before I send people away.
Yeah. Oh no, I got trapped in my own minimized window. This is how you all know we're doing it live. There we go.
All right. Here we go, friends. And just to reiterate, if you are not comfortable going into a breakout room, feel free to stay in the main room.
Great. Welcome back, everybody. I appreciate that folks took till the last second. I hope that means you were having juicy discussions and people over property. Absolutely, Renaissance. Would love to welcome if there's anyone who would like to share briefly, either from their dream or something in their chat, their conversation that really resonated. We have time for one or two share backs before we start talking about what we're going to do with all of these juicy visions.
I'll share mine.
Great.
This was something I did many years ago when my children were little, but you know, it's something that you could do now and probably people don't. And that was that we organized walk pools to school, home from school, walk pools, not carpools, walk pools. So a parent, because all these parents were driving their kid or picking their kids up from school because they were nervous for them to walk the half a mile or 3/4 of a mile when they were little all by themselves and with no one there. So one of the parents would walk to school, pick up 6 or 7 kids, and then walk them all home. And it was fun because the kids liked the walk. They got some exercise, some fresh air before they got home. Everyone was sort of de-stressed from school when they got home, and it was a great, and it was so easy to do. Just, you know, each parent, each week, each day of the week had walked to school and picked the kids up because they all went to the same school.
Thanks for sharing that, Kathleen. That's a great example of how not only we can show up differently when our housing is located near schools,
Yeah.
what happens when parents have good jobs and they have time off in order to like walk their kids to school, when a neighborhood is healthy, so like kids can walk to school safely and they're breathing clean air while they do it. I love how all that comes together in what you shared. Great, Renaissance. I see you humming in the chat. Can I invite you to share as well?
We were talking about capitalism, and you know, there wasn't enough space to get into like talking about like redlining and stuff, but talking about, you know, living over in the South End when the light rail got pulled in, and it was prefaced as something that was going to be an improvement so that people who were less well off could be able to travel into work. And what ended up happening is the property values rose so quickly that people weren't able to keep up with it, and it ended up being something that ended up pushing a lot of folks out. And the conversation also went into like bioswale development inside of neighborhoods. And what we were talking about is, you know, all these things that actually are designed to be helpful end up being problematic. And so in order for us to make sure that as we do these things that are healthy and beneficial for the environment, that the folks who most need them are able to continue to have access without destroying neighborhoods and pulling apart the ethnic and racial enclaves that have formed over time because of oppression, which requires us to have laws and in some ways is kind of antithetical to a lot of our values. And so how do we balance those things out? And we didn't get so much into the vision as recognizing some of the steps that may need to be taken in order for us to achieve the goals of actually having like interdependent bonds within our neighborhoods in the long term.
Thank you so much, Renaissance and group. Those are really important conversations to be having. And like green gentrification is a real thing, and it's been happening in Seattle and other places for a long time. So as we think about what does citywide affordable housing look like, holding that history and that analysis is so key. And I think will help us to really differentiate between false solutions and community-led solutions, and put our energy towards solutions that are going to be rooted in anti-displacement and transformative community investments. Thank you all. Yeah, I'm going to keep us moving, but if there's anything from your group or your story that you want to share, I welcome you to pop it in the chat. Let me go back to my notes. Cool. So y'all are probably not surprised to hear someone from 350 Seattle being like, okay, we can win that world, but it will take grassroots organizing. And specifically what we mean is grassroots organizing to build people power and working together across movements to take back our broken political system. We don't need to spend much time on it. I think y'all already know the problem that big corporations and wealthy developers prioritize profits over people and that keep barriers to affordable housing in place. They've gotten away with it by lying to the public and bankrolling opposition to affordable housing measures, like how Amazon spent thousands of dollars to defeat the affordable housing progressive revenue measure in 2017, known as the head tax. And then they spend millions more electing local politicians who tell us there's not enough resources to go around. All the while, these corporations are cashing in record profits. So that's where we're starting from. But here's what we're going to do about it. In the next few months, our Green New Deal team will be organizing to make housing as a climate solution top issue in upcoming local elections. We'll be using the local elections like a political stage to change the debate, create new political possibilities, and build our movement's power along the way, much like Sunrise National did in the 2020 presidential elections. So to do that, we'll build people power, a growing, active grassroots base that's ready to support and push solutions like affordable housing coupled with strong anti-displacement measures, and push our city leaders to take action. Some of the things we'll be doing to build that people power include launching a deep canvas, a relational outreach program that's a really exciting innovation in how we engage people who are all along the spectrum of their political beliefs and move them closer towards being aligned with our values and our movements. We'll be doing creative actions and moral protest, education and community building events, storytelling to lift up our narrative in media and community, and of course, lots of skill building, training, and opportunities for our volunteers. then I'm going to toss it to Amanda to talk about another piece of this.
Yeah, I've been speaking from the 350 Seattle side, but now I'm going to put on my 350 Seattle Action hat for a minute, because 350 Seattle Action is our 501c4 sister organization that can engage in electoral politics. So as 350 Seattle is building up the people power, 350 Seattle Action will be building up the political power by moving mayoral and city council candidates to become Green New Deal champions who are ready to take bold action on affordable housing from day one. And we'll do this by educating candidates about Seattle Green New Deal priorities, packing candidate town halls, bird dogging candidates, hosting candidate forums, creating scorecards, and generally campaigning for our champions, the people who are coming out really strong and would take bold action on this. Back to you, Jess.
Thanks. Could I get the next slide, Shimona? Oh, yeah, perfect. So this is a really exciting time to get involved, y'all. We are building out our teams and we're preparing for a big public campaign launch later this spring. What you've heard tonight is kind of like an insider preview or a sneak peek of the campaign that's coming. And right now our volunteer-led teams are recruiting for folks to help with things like launching our deep canvas, the outreach that I mentioned, by being part of our demo team, and testing materials like Canvas scripts and trainings for new volunteers. We're looking for folks to help research candidates and their platforms and who's giving to their campaigns. Looking for support creating art and storytelling tools. And we also have a really exciting opportunity upcoming with the 350 Seattle Green Book Club. We're reading A Planet to Win, Why We Need a Green New Deal this month. I just realized that my notes are a little bit different than the slides. Great. So the date for the book club is on here. So there's really 3 ways to get involved right now. You can join a volunteer-led team. You can check out our April book group to learn more and meet some other folks, or you can look out for more opportunities to plug in after we officially launch in May. And if you are interested in doing any of these things, we have a short form for you to fill out to get in touch with our campaign. Shimona, if you'd be so kind as to drop that in the chat. I'd actually like people to take 2 minutes right now if they're interested in getting involved, and go ahead and fill it out. So what happens when you fill out this form? You tell us a little bit about what you're interested in doing, and then one of our organizers will follow up with you in a few days to do an initial one-to-one and get you plugged in with your team. So yeah, I would really encourage, we'll send out the form after the meeting as well if you need to take a minute and think on it. But if you're like, yeah, this sounds great, go ahead and click on that form right now, fill it out. And while folks are doing that, I'd love to welcome any questions. Feel free to just hop off mute and ask a question if you have one. It says you can't open the form. That's a really good flag. Let's see what's up with that. All right. It looks like we're having a technical difficulty with the form. Apologies, y'all. We'll go ahead and make sure that's sent out. All right, great. Amanda's on it. Renaissance, I've just clicked your unmute button. Did that work for you?
Yeah, so I ran into this, and if it was created in the 350 by a 350 email, when you go to the creation form, it has a drop-down menu at the top in there that says unlink only 350s.
Great, thank you.
I just tried that, so if someone could let me know if it's working now. Thank you, Renaissance.
Great.
I did
and
that
while we're
the last meeting too.
Good learning all around. I just want to make one more call for questions. We are really excited to keep building out our presentation and the way that we're thinking about this organizing. So questions are really valuable, both for helping you get up to speed and for helping us learn about how this is all landing with you.
So Jess, this is Iris. I'd like to ask a question.
Go for it. Thanks, Iris.
I'm just trying to understand the coordination between
this new campaign of 350s around affordable housing as part of the Seattle's Green New Deal with the current city government, like, you know, OSE has, I think the budget now includes a position for them to coordinate with Green New Deal oversight team, and how is that coordination happening with city folks? How is it working?
Yeah, so the Green New Deal Oversight Board that you're referring to is one of the priorities that we had when we initially launched the campaign in 2019. And that fall, we wrote the Green New Deal Oversight Board into legislation that City Council passed. We had to then spend 2 budget cycles fighting for funding. But as Iris just mentioned, we now have funding for the Seattle Green New Deal Community Oversight Board and a position at the Office of Sustainability and Environment to staff that board, which means that there's an open application process. They're recruiting and nominating board members. I was really honored to be nominated a few weeks ago, repping 350 Seattle, and nominations are still underway, but Puget Sound Sage and Mazaska Talks have also had board members nominated. That's like it's helpful maybe to think about it as like an inside-outside strategy. So like the Green New Deal Community Oversight Board is within the city and is like making recommendations to city leaders about what our Green New Deal policy should be. And at the same time, the community campaign outside the city will continue building the grassroots pressure that makes it possible for city leaders to take bolder action on Green New Deal priorities and set the priorities of city leaders who aren't yet engaging around Green New Deal. So we think about those two, the Green New Deal Oversight Board and the community campaign, as really strategically talking to each other in a way that we can both push the city from the inside and really hold our politicians accountable from the outside.
Thank you.
Great question.
If nobody else has a question, I have a quick question related to housing. I'm sure that some of y'all have seen the rollout of Compassion Seattle and are hopefully similarly concerned about what it portends. And I was wondering if y'all thought at all about, or if it's within the purview of your organizing for housing within the context of the Green New Deal to be pushing back against that potential ballot initiative. That, you know, is sort of Trojan horsing, for those of y'all who aren't perhaps familiar with it, basically legitimizing sweeps of unhoused folks.
Yeah, good question, Michael. So 350 Seattle hasn't like formally, there isn't yet like a formal endorsement or anti-endorsement of the campaign. So organizationally, we haven't made a decision yet, but talking as Jess, the organizer and community member, I think it's really important for us to be engaging with our community partners and keeping a close eye on Compassionate Seattle. As Michael mentioned, it's a ballot initiative that's being run by the Downtown Business Association and politicians like Tim Burgess that cloaks sweeps, you know, forcing houseless folks out of the places that they're staying, throwing all their stuff out when there's no access to services or care. It's legitimizing sweeps and it's doing it in a pretty shady way. So when we see things like that moving in our political ecosystem, I think these are opportunities to be really clear about like, what do we need for our communities to survive and thrive? And how can we come together across movements and stand for justice and stand for like taking care of each other? 350 Seattle is actively opposed to sweeps. We were part of the effort last fall to like cut funding for the city's navigation team that has been sweeping houseless folks. So yeah, I think as this new initiative develops, it just launched earlier this week. We're talking lots with community partners about what is showing up in solidarity and really holding the line on like taking care of people, treating people as humans, regardless of whether they have a house or not, how we do that and how we can be strategic together.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yep.
This is Merle. That particular initiative sort of falls in line with what the rest of the county has been doing in small cities, where they kicked the unsheltered or the unhoused people out. And Mercer Island's the most recent contributor to that philosophy. But what they do is without the promise that the Downtown Seattle Association or those big businesses are doing, which is they're attempting to say that they're going to provide money to put us up to speed with where we've sheltered everybody, and then they'll do the sweeps. But it's really duplicitous.
It is. And I think, Merle, you talking about funding brings up a good point, which is that the Compassionate Seattle Initiative says, oh, well, we're going to pay for more funding for housing, and it doesn't identify a funding source. And it's likely that they'll try to pull that funding source from Jumpstart Seattle, just like the mayor did this fall, taking money that's already designated for affordable housing and repackaging it so it looks good for their political aims. So I think Compassionate Seattle is something to keep an eye on. And also, I think, to like draw back to the themes in the conversation here tonight, when we talk about a Green New Deal future, that starts with taking care of our communities now. And when we talk about like the choices that we're making now, they resonate like decades ahead into our future. So, for too long, I think the climate movement has said, well, we do climate stuff and like we're not doing other stuff. And there's like arbitrary boundaries between movements. And what we say in Green New Deal work is like, if it's about people, if it's about our communities, then it matters. And it's all connected to creating a healthy climate justice future. And we really appreciate those questions, y'all. I'm just getting up to speed on Compassionate Seattle myself, and I love how critically folks are thinking about it here. I noticed that we're at time, so just wanted to say that I'm happy to hang on afterwards if anyone has questions. It could be like that end of meeting time when we're all cleaning up and chit-chatting. But I'll officially pass it back to Shimona to close us up in a good way.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, BJ and Aki, for speaking. We are not going to close out with a song tonight, but I would love to just let everybody who is still here, if you want to come off mute and just share any gratitude that you want to, or do it in the chat, that is welcome. And for those of you who want to stick around and ask Jess for some questions, maybe for like another 5 minutes, because it's late. Dinner's a calling for some people. But yeah, definitely put your gratitude, and hopefully I'll see you all next month or filling some of these volunteer roles.